belief a little bit, and then we can talk about
Okay.
better describe the other things that we're addressing here tonight. What our own science now is finding is that our beliefs actually occur in the human heart, which is becoming a new frontier, one of the least explored frontiers from the perspective that we're talking about now. We know our hearts pump blood, but we can build a machine to do that, and it may be that may be the least of what our hearts do. They are capable of doing so much more. Ancient traditions, and I'm going to reference Sanskrit because they're some of the clearest in terms of their drawings as well as their records. They define thought, feeling, and emotion as three separate yet related experiences. The thoughts occur in the upper energy centers from our communication centers, from our throat up. Those are considered to be logic or thought-based experiences, and our emotions are in the lower creative or procreative centers. And in the Sanskrit charts, they're the three lower energy centers, or the three lower chakras, where the emotions are focused, and the three upper energy centers, where our thoughts are focused, creating the six centers. And then between the two is the seventh center that has not yet been accounted for, is the heart. So what they describe is that we, in our minds, use our minds to create the image or to model or simulate the visualization of what we would like to experience, whether it's a healing in our bodies or the bodies of our loved ones, or success in our careers, abundance in our lives. That becomes a thought. And from their perspective, a thought is almost powerless by itself. A thought that has nothing to imbue it with the energy that brings it to life is what we call a wish. And I'm not saying it's good, bad, right, or wrong, that the thought actually has very little power unto itself. It's when we imbue that thought with the power of our emotion from the lower energy centers, and they define emotion as love, so our love for what we're thinking, or love's opposite, our fear. Sometimes subconsciously we have a fear that we're not even aware of for what it is that we're thinking. So the thought can be anything. And into that thought, we imbue it with the power of our love or our fear, if it's subconscious. And when we marry those two together, the thought married with the emotion creates in our hearts a feeling. And a feeling and a belief are very closely related. When we have a belief, we have very strong feelings about our beliefs. So now we've just defined feeling is the union of thought and emotion, and belief is a special kind of feeling. Now here is why this is interesting, and I think a big part of the empowerment is in the information, because for many people, if we talk about having a feeling, they say, oh yeah, sure, I'm going to have a feeling. How's that going to possibly affect anything in our world? And this is where the new discoveries are so important, Nicole, because in the last couple of years, the discoveries have shown, first of all, we all know that our world is made of electrical and magnetic energy. That, I think our audience is very much aware of that. Our heart is the largest generator in our bodies of electrical and magnetic energy. Our brains generate a little bit of electrical and magnetic energy. So if you're going to change the stuff the world is made of, it makes tremendous sense that you have to change the electrical and the magnetic energy of that stuff. Our hearts are 5,000 times stronger magnetically than our brains, and our hearts are about 100 times stronger electrically than our brains, and this may explain why feeling and belief is so much more powerful than the thought underlying those things. So when we have a belief that Joe is talking about of our abundance or our healing or the healing of our loved ones, we're literally creating in our hearts a template, an electrical and a magnetic field in our bodies that extends beyond our bodies into the world around us. Literally, this is not a metaphor, it literally rearranges the atoms of physical matter if we understand how to speak the language. It can interrupt the flow of space and time and literally change the stuff our universe is made of, and all we're doing is having a feeling. And the beauty is we don't have to know any of the things I've just shared. And when we understand that a feeling is a force of nature that can be measured, and belief is part of that force, all of a sudden it changes something inside of us when we can actually see why a prayer in our heart could possibly have an effect on our loved one halfway around the world in the battlefield of Iraq, for example, or in another room in another city, 20 miles away. When we begin to see this connection, it helps us to feel empowered, and then we know how to do more of the right things to create the effects. We find out what works and what doesn't, and the things that don't work, don't put any more energy into them, and the things that do work, we can put a lot of energy into them. So the bottom line to all this, what we've learned in the monasteries, in the lost texts, in the ancient texts, what our own scientists are showing us, is that when we create the feeling in our heart as if our prayer is already answered, as if the outcome has already come to pass, as if the healing is already accomplished, as if the abundance already exists, as if our project is already successful, as if our relationship is already successful. When we feel those kinds of feelings and give gratitude and appreciation for those things, those feelings create the electrical and the magnetic effects that bring that reality into our lives, and it takes a lot of the mystery and the woo-woo-ness out of what's happening. We see that there is a process, and to learn that process is literally a technology. So again, long answer to a short question.
Yeah, that's okay, because I mean this is important, and it's interesting. As you were kind of covering that, I was reflecting on how it's so much the opposite in the conditioned sort of mainstream world, where heart things are sort of dismissive, really, and feelings are not encouraged in the mainstream, really,
In our culture. See, this is in Western culture, and this is the irony. This is the irony. We go into these living cultures, Nicole, and it's precisely the opposite. In living cultures, an individual's feelings and their beliefs are among the most powerful experiences that they are trained and conditioned and preserved. The ways to go about creating those things are preserved in their culture and in their practices and their texts. And it's interesting to me that in the Judeo-Christian tradition, the very texts that describe precisely what we're talking about now are the texts that were either edited tremendously or in some cases removed altogether, such as the Gospel of Thomas talks about this a lot. We're completely removed from our most cherished spiritual traditions, and now today we're conditioned, if you're a man in our culture, you're conditioned not to even have these experiences, and if you're a woman, you're conditioned that if you're going to have them, go have them someplace by yourself, don't let anybody else see them, they have no effect, and come back when you're done. And maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's not too far in some families and in some societies.
Very much
so. Yeah.
It's interesting that would be the seat of our power, of what's driving, us consciously, as you're saying. So, very interesting. And I wonder how that comes into play now with, the specific beliefs that I'm still trying to get specific with you, Gregg. In the book, Spontaneous Healing and Belief, what paradigms are we shattering that specifically relate to
any paradigm? The paradigm of as to the limits of human life, for example. We're conditioned to believe, and the scientists tell us that we're going to be here 70 to 100 years. I'm going to say right now, scientifically, there's absolutely no reason for the human body to stop functioning after 70 to 100 years. Every cell in our body can reproduce and heal itself. The DNA that scientists have told us for almost 30 years now that deteriorate on the ends, the little telomeres that they say become brittle and break off. While that's true, that can happen. We have the enzymes and the chemistry in our body that's designed to repair and heal those if we give them the right environment, the right conditions. Every organ in our body can regenerate its own cells, even the organs that we were told could not, including brain tissue, including heart tissue, including the neural tissue in the spinal column. All of these things now are documented with the ability to reproduce and regenerate themselves if they're given the conditions to do that. And those conditions are directly linked to what's happening in the human heart.